Gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. Want to introduce you to a portion of the new project that we got going on. Daddy's got a big chubby 4, and it's in the backyard behind the teardrop that we just finished up. Anyways, what I want to share with you today is this. This is a 1955 301 Chrysler Polysphere. So I bought this from a gentleman that hangs out with us at the car club. He had to move. He wanted to do something with it, but never did anything with it. He swears he heard it run before it was pulled. Whatever. It turns over. I can put a wrench on the crank. Turn it over by hand, all the valves move, so that's always good. It's empty of oil. I whipped this up. This is the beginnings of a running stand. So we're going to try to get this old motor fired up and see if she still runs. So couple unique things we got going on. This had, I believe, what was called a fluid flight behind it. It was a 3-speed semi-automatic transmission. Not the goofiest one, which had a fluid coupler and a clutch. This one just had a fluid coupler. I didn't get the transmission. I had the bell housing and that pseudo torque converter, but I've been trying to sell that. Nobody wants it. Go figure. So what I have planned, I've got a Muncie 4-speed, so I want to row gears. That stack up right there that I've been mocking up is a Chevy or Buick Olds Pontiac scatter shield and homemade adapter plate, which seems to work pretty good. I bought it from a gentleman online that apparently these parts have actually been 175 miles an hour on Bonneville. So that's pretty cool. I also have over here a couple other neat parts. Some of the other neat parts. An original Webco, LA, California, soon to be Weber, I believe. Aluminum flywheel for these old Polys and the early A Hemis, like a 331. The bolt pattern matches. So we are golden. We're gonna row gears in this old Poly. So I just basically whipped up that back. So we whipped up this running stand. Old motor mount that'll grab onto a bunch of different bell housings. Because we have to mock this up. Get the starter installed, which goes onto the bell housing. Fabric-cobbled a couple of quick front mounts. Let's see if it holds the weight. These things are absolute fat pigs. Apparently this is before they invented thin wall casting. This 301 weighs 700 pounds as it sits without this armor plated bell housing. So let's see if she holds the weight. Yay! Yep, that ought to do. If we lock these wheels down. Oh, really? It never ends, does it? Well, I think she'll run on that. Alright. Well, we've got to do some tappy on the back of the crank here to be able to mount that flywheel. So I basically just got this kind of stuck together for now. Should be just fine. So let's take a little weight. We'll disconnect it. Alright. So what I'd like to do now is show you how this adapter works. So this is an SFI explosion-proof bell housing, older model. I think he said he got it from Summit, which is fine. What do we got here? Yay. I'll show you what we're going to be doing here. So I got some bolts. We'll probably have to make another run because even tool and anchor didn't have the right bit for us. I like to show you this. So here's the custom part of this, and it actually looks very well made. Maybe someone made it for him. Let's knock this off too. There we go. Don't drop that on your toes. It's fucking heavy. Alright, so here's the custom part. Dowels to match Chevy. Dowel holes to match these guys. Okay. These two get some countersink bolts in them. These three actually go through the bell housing and this front plate, so they all get sandwiched together. Then you have these 3/8, what, 24s? National Fines. Let's swing you over. Yep. So this plate transfers the dowel locations. This is the front part of the scatter shield. There it is. So that's the front part of the scatter shield. All these go through the bell housing. I can actually hit this one, and this one with the bell housing as well. Like I said, it went, 170 plus, so it ought to be fine for me dicking around with this old monster Poly. But what we do have to do, let's lift this off. Is this. So these old Chrysler flywheels match on here. These holes that's why I had the calipers out. Right at about 442-ish. 446. So that is a very nice hole for a half 20 tap. So we're going to tap these holes, run some nice grade 8 bolts, which is amazing because this has what, 180 horse when it was brand new, and it has 8 bolts that hold it together. A small block Chevy only uses 6. And I think they're 7/16 if I remember right. But yeah, so we got all the bits. I even have a little mini high torque starter for this thing because it's got the adapter, the proper adapter to bolt onto this flywheel, the bell housing, and the right teeth to engage on this. So we bought the whole shebangs from this nice old gentleman. I'll have to find his picture. He wouldn't sign the bell housing for me, but he did sign a picture for me. What else are we gonna do? Yeah, we're gonna tap those. I gotta make a guide block for me, but that'll be easy. Don't be scared of buying tools once in a while. Nice half 20 tap. Long taper. Yep. Perfect. Well, we're dorking around. Hotheads. They're mainly for Hemi stuff. Early Hemi. But this motor actually shares the block and the crank and the camshaft with a 331 Hemi. So if we get real frisky, we can sonic check the bores, check for core shift, which is the other side of the cylinder bores, and if it's good, this can be bored out 1/8 of an inch and then put 331 Hemi pistons. And if I trip over a set of heads, so be it. If not, she's going to stay a Poly. Chrysler Polyhead engines, 301 1955, 188 horse, 275 foot-pounds of torque at 8-to-1 compression with a 2-barrel. We're going to liven that up. We'll see how that cam is. I know I can buy a new cam. They're not exactly cheap. However, we can get this cam reground, make it a bit lumpy. And I also found me a Hemi 4-barrel intake. So we'll liven it up with a nice 4-barrel. I scored an old Holly, which we can make an adapter plate for if we have to bolt on there. First thing I did, put a wrench on it, make sure it turns over by hand, and it turned over easy. So I went and got me engine store. It's like a foaming, real clingy, oily in a can. Use it for outboard motors when you store them for the winter. Pulled all the spark plugs, hosed it down, and then I turned it over a couple times every year so the springs don't take a seat, because there's always going to be one that's the valve is open and you don't want to hold it there forever. So I kept turning it over, spraying it down. It turns free. So all we're going to do is put some oil in it. I got a filter for that big ass canister. We'll put some oil in it. Clean up that old 2-barrel carburetor that I found. Actually matches the bolt pattern. We'll clean that up and see if we can't get her running. But first I got to put all this flywheel stuff on so we can get the starter on it so we can spin her over and we'll check compression. Went to the machine shop there at work and grabbed a little borrowed a little chunk of aluminum, put a nice 1/2-inch hole in it, which is going to be a guide for me for that 1/2-inch tap. Yeah, that's better. Get a little more torque on it. There we go. So here's a little tip for you. Mind you, just the tip. I'm going to run that tap out just a little bit through my block here. And you can feel it wiggle around in the hole. So I'm going to run it in just a little bit more until it stops wiggling. And then that way, it is as perfectly centered as we can get it. Then we'll clamp that on there. Then we can run the tap down. This is actually tapping pretty nice. It's tough steel in that crank flange, but it's not bad. And make sure you use a lube. WD-40 works in a pinch. Yay, tappy tappy. Well, I don't think that's ever going to come off of there. That is a lot of friggin' bolts. And half-inchers too. So now what we're going to do is we also got, said this starter goes with it. And then looking at this guy, see where it lines up. Looks like around there. So let me go get some bolts and nuts. We'll run that on and then pry the gear out and see if it meshes nicely. I just want to make sure that this thing does indeed line up. Okay. It's not too crazy. Alright, well. Looks like that's going to work. It has to be pulled outboard all the way for it to clear. Alright, well, let's drop this back off again. Put that bell housing on. Oh, this is heavy. Alright, well, let's see about putting this back on the stand. Got the flywheel all hooked up. Well, there we go. Let's get this balancer off of there. Well, so a couple quick things. I got some 1030. I'm just throwing lube, trying to hit the valves, hit some on the rockers. Don't forget little interesting things like this for the distributor. It gets oiled once in a while because it's probably way dry. So let's fill that up. It did have about a quart or two in it. A little bit of sludge. It's oily. So that's alright. I gotta go get some cheap oil. We'll change that filter out, and we can start cranking it. See if it builds some oil pressure. Speaking of which, I do have to get a gauge on that. This one's vacuum, and I got an old crummy carburetor we'll go through. See about, oh shoot, I need to find the draft tube. I had to take it off to get it on the stand, so I gotta find that, put that back on there, why not? We'll probably jam a little PCV valve in it. PCV valve. And we'll get her lubed up. I'm also going to hit it again. Here's what I was talking about when I was loosening it up. It's called engine store. Fogging oil. What it's meant to do is hose it down the carburetor while it's running, let it poof out oil, smoke and shit, so that it lubes up everything inside, coats everything with a fine coat of oil. I've just been spraying this into the spark plugs. Let's take a peek at that. So you can see a little bit. All I'm doing is, see, it's like foamy. So I'll go through and hose it in all these holes. It's going to smoke like a banshee when we start it, but at least it won't have a stuck ring and start breaking pistons and shit. Okay.
Ready?
Yep, ignition. Crank. Kill it. Leave it off.
Ready?
Yep.
Oh, no.
Alright, contact.
Yep.